Shabbat Shalom. We are into the month of Kislev, which is the month of Hanukkah. At the end of this month is Hanukkah, and the last few days are at the beginning of the next month, which is Tevet. So I am Rabbi Michael Washer, and I am the leader of Tzion Messianic Congregation. And today I'm going to be teaching a teaching that I've been teaching for many years, but it's not something I like to teach because I used to teach it. I didn't teach it well. I taught it with anger in my heart. And because this teaching today, it's sort of like looking at anti-Semitism for a Jew. You know, you look at it and you just get mad. Well, the foundations of this war between the way of the Greek, is what it's called, Hellenism, and Judaism starts today in this Torah portion. So we're going to go over this. This is foundational teaching. It's very basic stuff in Judaism. But it has caused a lot of problems. It's caused problems for me personally because of the way I used to teach it. When I learned about it, I was incensed because it put all the pieces together, but it put the pieces together and made me angry instead of putting the pieces together and making me happy. So I teach it in a different way now. I have a different heart, different spirit, different way of doing it. And I look at it differently too. So this is going to be, the first thing we're going to talk about and look at is the word le'umim, which means kingdoms. And in the Torah portion that we're looking at, and it's about the birth of Jacob and his twin brother Esav, or Esau. Jacob, who becomes Israel, and Esav, who becomes, or is named, Edom. And there's a fight between these two from before they're born. And God initiates and makes this fight to happen. So this is a song about the word le'umim that is used in this prophecy that God gives to Rebecca, the woman who's in labor with these two kids, and he calls them le'umim, kingdoms, which is translated kingdoms. Adat le'umim tesuvah b'cha v'alei halamaron shuva o shuva. The gathering of kingdoms will surround your throne. Over them exalted, you return back home. Yadi le'umim, le'umim b'meisharim. Yadi le'umim, le'umim b'meisharim. And he will judge the kingdoms in uprightness. He will judge the world with his truth. Le'umim, the kingdoms will surround your throne. Le'umim, the kingdoms worship you alone. Le'umim, the kingdoms will surround your throne. Le'umim, the kingdoms worship you alone. The kingdoms of the world have become the kingdom of our Lord and of his King Messiah. And he will reign le'olam va'ed. He will reign forevermore. Yadi le'umim, le'umim b'meisharim. Yadi le'umim, le'umim b'meisharim, and he will judge the kingdoms in uprightness. He will judge the world with his truth. Oh, le'umim, the kingdoms will surround your throne. Le'umim, the kingdoms worship you alone. Oh, le'umim, the kingdoms will surround your throne. And le'umim, the kingdoms worship you alone. And the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his King Messiah. And he will reign le'olam va'ed. He will reign forevermore. And he will reign le'olam va'ed. He will reign forevermore. He will reign forevermore. Ultimately, all the kingdoms will be changed, and they will basically be submitted to the one kingdom, which is God's kingdom, which is really Jacob's kingdom or Israel's kingdom. And all the kingdoms, all the different kingdoms, are basically summed up in this one guy, Edom, or Esav. Esav. So we're going to look at two different portions. This is a long, long story, and there's a lot of words in it. So I'm only picking two parts of it to look at and to talk about. So the first part is in Genesis chapter 25, where God gives Rivka this prophecy about what's happening inside her gut. Now these are the Tol'dot. Generations is Tol'dot. That's the name of the Torah portion, Tol'dot. These are the Tol'dot of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham became the father of Isaac, or Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was 40 years old when he took Rivka. Now 40 years is a picture of 4,000, so Yitzchak here is a picture of the Messiah taking a bride in the year 4000 when he died. When he died and rose again and took his bride, which is the body of Messiah. So he's 40 years old when he takes Rivka to be his wife. And Yitzchak prayed to the Lord upright before his wife, is what it says in Hebrew. It's one word that I translate with two words. Upright before is this word in Hebrew. And I have to put two words in order to explain this word. Isaac prayed to the Lord upright before his wife because she was barren. And the Lord answered him, and Rivka, his wife, conceived, but the children struggled, fought inside of her, and she said, if it's so, then why then am I? So she sounds a little suicidal to me. It's that bad. I might be wrong, but that's how it sounds to me. Because that's what it says in Hebrew. Why am I? Why do I exist? Is what it says in Hebrew. If it is so, then why am I? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 kingdoms, le'umim, are in your womb. Not 2 children, not 2 people, 2 kingdoms are in your womb. And 2 peoples, which is a different word. Kingdoms is le'umim, but people is which is a related word. You can see the word in le'um. It's a related word. So le'umim it really means a gathering of people. So the word Am is in Leumim, peoples, or gathering of peoples, kingdoms. 2 kingdoms, Leumim, are in your womb, and 2 Amim, will be separated from your heart bowels, your me'ah. And 1 kingdom from the other kingdom, Uleom Milom, will be stronger, and the older will serve the younger. Now this is a weird thing to translate. Everybody translates it, 1 kingdom will be stronger than the other. But it's not that simple. Because in Hebrew it's Ulom, 2 kingdom, Milom, from kingdom. So how you translate that is, it's up for grabs. But the way I translate it is, and 1 kingdom from the other kingdom will be stronger, and the older shall serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came forth red, that's Edom, all over like a hairy garment. Hairy is Esav. And they named him Esav because he was hairy. But it also means made or fulfilled, like an old. He came out like a full-grown man. He was completely developed as a full-grown man, sort of. He was all hairy, like a full-grown man. All hairy garment, and they named him Esav. Afterward, his brother came forth with his hand, grasping onto Esav's Ekev, heel, Ekev. So his name was called Yaakov, from heel. And Yitzchak was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. He takes his wife when he's 40, and then when he's 60, which is a picture of the year 6000, the kids are born together. And warfare. Immediate warfare. So this is obviously a picture, a very, very simple, basic picture of the Messiah taking his bride, and then the children, the 2 kingdoms, are born together in the year 6000. I could stop right there, and that's enough to be like college level compared to most teachings. But this is kindergarten for this teaching. This is just the very foundational understanding in order to build on it so we can really understand what's going on here. And remember, everything in the Bible it's a picture, everything. It's not there as a law, it's not there as a commandment, and it's not there as history. It's there to let us know God and come to know him closer and closer and closer. Now, we're going to come to this story a little bit later. And we're going to pick through it, because there's a couple things that are important here. But right now, we're just going to stick with the story in Genesis 25. And we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to go back. So, up here on the top, I've always got like a little header of what this page is about. This is the blessing that continues to Isaac. Now, in this Torah portion, I'm getting to where this is my favorite passage in the whole Old Testament. I mean, this is my passage. This is the thing, man. This is the key to everything. And I just found it, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't really even see it. I didn't really know it was there. So this is my life-changing passage. And it's in this Torah portion this week. And it's right after what we just read, the story about Jacob and Esav being born. There was famine in the land, aside from the first famine that had been in the days of Abraham. And Yitzchak went to Avimelech, king of the Philistines, Gerar. And the Lord appeared to him. The Lord appeared to Yitzchak. Now, remember what's happening is that Abraham did the law. He did Judaism. He was taught by the Holy Spirit. And because he did that, God gave him the seed. And that seed then, he had a lot of kids. He had a lot of kids, Abraham did. But only one of them was the seed, and that was Yitzchak. And then Yitzchak has more than one kid, but only one of them has a seed. And then Jacob has a whole bunch of kids, and one of them has a seed, Judah, and it goes on from there until the Messiah. So this seed is very important, and that's what he's talking about here. That's what Yitzchak and God are discussing here, is this seed. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Don't go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land that I will tell you." Now, where is he? He's in Gerar, which is in the land of the Palestinians, the land of the Pelishtim, Philistines. That's what Palestinian means. It means Philistine. So Avimelech was the king of the Philistines. The place is Gerar. Now I want you to remember this. This is very important. That it's God talking to Isaac in the land of the Palestinians. And the Lord appeared to him and said, sojourn in this land. It's not just big land, Canaan, It's smaller lands, plural, also. And one of them is the land of the Philistines. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For to you and to your seed I will give all these lands, plural. It's not singular. It's plural. You have the land of the Pelishtim, Philistines. You have the land of the Canaani, Canaanites. You have the land of the Amori, Amorites. You have the land of the Ammoni, Ammonites. You have the land of the Moabi, Edomites. You have the Moabites. You have the land of the Edomi, Edomites. And God promised all of those lands to Abraham, and then to Isaac, and then later to Jacob. And I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father, and I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give your seed all these lands. I do not know why Israel gave the Gaza Strip back to the Philistines. Back in, I don't even know when it was, 2006 maybe. It was horrible. Because immediately after giving back land and businesses and agriculture and infrastructure, and I mean, you cannot imagine, it's like giving the entire city of El Paso to Mexico and saying, there, just take it, now do with it what you want. And they used that land, that very land that was given to them, to fire rockets into Israel. Immediately, this is what they started doing. And Israel just goes, oh well. So this was a big problem because God gave us that land. Now, the Sinai Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, that's a different matter. In the Bible, that is Egypt. The Sinai is Egypt. So when it says that Abraham went down to Egypt, all it means is the Sinai Peninsula. Right across from the Gaza Strip. A few miles. They've got tunnels that go from the Gaza Strip into the Sinai Peninsula to this day. That's a couple miles across the border. But this is different. This is land that belongs to the Jews. The Gaza Strip belongs to the Jews, and this proves it. So right after God says, I will give your seed all these lands, and all the Gentiles of the earth will bless themselves by your seed. That's the Messiah. Because, this is the word ekev, on the heels of. There's a Torah portion called ekev in Deuteronomy that says, on the heels of listening to the mitzvot, I will bless you, and you'll come to know me. On the heels of you listening, not doing, not just doing, like commandments, listening to them. Not listening to God and doing them and then listening to them. And if you do that, because of that, I will bless you, etc. Well, here it's the same word. Because on the heels of Abraham listening to my voice, he kept my charge, he kept my mitzvot, he kept my statutes, he kept my Torah, my instructions. Now, there is no way around this verse for Christians. There's no way around this verse for Jews. It's there, it's always been there, everybody just ignores it. That Abraham did Judaism. He did the law, if you want to call it that. He did the commandments, if you want to call it that. This is, I think, now my favorite verse in the Old Testament. And it's getting more so, by the way. It's growing. It's growing in me. Because I'm going to give you all these things to your seed. Why? Because Abraham did Judaism. If you want to walk in the ways of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, or at least Abraham, Christian, if you're a Christian, if you want to at least walk in the ways of Abraham, you have to do Judaism. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to walk in the ways of Abraham, do what Abraham did. Listen to God's voice, keep his charge, his, where did it go? Vayishmor mishmartai, that's his charge, that's the watched things, mishmartai. Mitzvotai, what you might translate commandments. Do the chukotai, statutes, which are, in Hebrew, hakak means to carve into, to chop into, to put a picture, a real clear boundary or picture in the dirt. My statutes and my Torah, what you might translate as laws, but the Bible translates Torah. Yeah, the Torah in the Bible is translated as instruction. Torah means instruction. All right. So that's the very next thing in this passage about Jacob and Esav. So the blessing continues to Isaac, and then we're going to go back and look at this prophecy. And this is the whole rest of the teaching basically is about this prophecy. Here's the passage we're going to be looking at. 2 kingdoms, le'umim, are in your womb, and 2 peoples will be separated from your heart bowels, your me'ah, and a kingdom from another kingdom will be stronger, and the older shall serve the younger. The 2 kingdoms that were in her womb were just on a surface level, they were Jacob and Esav. That's who they were. But God doesn't call them kids. He doesn't call them infants. He doesn't call them, what do people call things that they abort? What do they call it? An undeveloped, a fetus. They're not called fetuses. They're called kingdoms. So they're not just 2 people. They are representative of many, many, many peoples. So in Hebrew it says le'om, kingdoms, le'um. Now Rashi says it always means the word kingdom. And then he gives many verses about it to prove it, that all throughout Scripture the word le'om or le'um means kingdom. It's all through the Scriptures. And never does it not mean a kingdom, by the way. Never. Not one single time. Because, by the way, he quotes Avodah Zarah, which is in the Talmud, 2b. The word le'um or le'om, le'umim, plural, means peoples or kingdoms. It's from the root meaning to gather together. Means people. So you can see the word, in the word le'om. It's the same word. Le means 2. So it means 2 peoples, or 2 peoples, which means a kingdom. And it means people, it's from being collected together. The word means people, but only because they're collected together. Amim means peoples. Now here's the very first difference that I'm going to talk about between Jews and Christians. And that's what I'm going to say a lot today. And I'm sorry if that's offensive. There's really no other way to say it and make it make sense. I've tried for many years to come up with a different way. There really isn't. The difference between Jews and Christians is really one thing. That the Jewish people are God's chosen people. Chosen for what? Chosen for a job. Chosen for a job that you as a Christian do not have unless you come in to do it with us. Which you can. The difference between Jews and Christians is really in this word, It means a collection of people. We are not that. We're not that. The word for kingdom, God's kingdom, is malchut. And it's just basically the word melech, which is king. It's about God. It's not about us. For Jews. For real Jews. It's not about us. If it's about you as a Jew, you're not a Jew. You're acting like these dudes, the kingdoms, the Gentiles. If you're a Jew, God has called you to be different. God has called you to be a Jew, to be focused solely on the king, a servant of the king. Gentiles don't have to do that. That's not their deal. Their deal is to be gathered together and do their thing, do their culture. Mexican culture, Armenian culture, Italian culture, whatever. That's a le'um. And that's their thing. But not the Jewish people. Our thing is different. Our thing is God's kingdom, period. And focused on the Melech. That's why it's a different word, kingdom. God's kingdom is not this word, le'om. It's a totally different word, melech. So, I can say a whole lot more about that, but I'm not going to because I think it might come up as I'm teaching. So let's talk about le'umim, the kingdoms. The kingdoms, or the people. What's translated as peoples. In Genesis chapter 27, a little bit after, a passage that we're going to look at, a little bit after what we're looking at right now, when Esav has the blessing stolen from him by Jacob, supposedly. Chapter 27, verse 29, when Jacob is then being blessed by his father, I'll say in verse 28, "Now may God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of earth, and abundance of grain and new wine." He's talking to Jacob. He's blessing Jacob with these things. How can he do that? I don't know, but that's what he does. He gives him the dew of heaven. He gives him the fatness of the earth. He gives him an abundance of grain and new wine. He can't do that. They're just words. But they do. He's giving him this. And then he says, "May peoples, le'umim, serve you, and nations bow down to you." Goyim, nations, Gentiles, bow down to you. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. He's talking to Jacob. So, this says kingdoms will bow down to you. Now that really is the bottom line of the whole teaching today. And you can maybe start to see why this is problematic for me to teach. Because that makes it sound like I'm a Jew and I want the Gentiles, I want the Christians to bow down to me as a son of Jacob. Okay, Psalm 47. Psalm 47. I'm having trouble getting to the passages I need to get to because I have a Band-Aid on my finger. All right, chapter 47. This is sung and said at Rosh Hashanah. This is a Rosh Hashanah psalm. Verse 3. He, God, the king, well, verse 2, it says king, a great king over all the earth. He subdues peoples under us, that's amim. He subdues amim under us, and it doesn't say nations in Hebrew, it says le'umim, kingdoms. Kingdoms under our feet. God subdues kingdoms under our, Jacob's feet, Israel's feet. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. That sounds like those Jews are trying to subdue us. Except Jews didn't write it. This is God's word. Psalm 65, verse 7. God stills the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and the tumult of the amim. And it doesn't say amim. It says le'umim. The tumult of the kingdoms. Now it's describing the kingdoms as the waves of the sea. And that is carried through Isaiah, all the way to the book of Revelation, where it describes the Gentile kingdoms, the le'umim hagoyim, the kingdoms of the Gentiles, as the roaring of the sea, the waves of the sea. Proverbs 14. We're going to see it again in Isaiah, but we're going to take a little detour to Proverbs 14. And by the way, these are only a few of the verses. There's many, many, many verses. So I just picked a few that I thought would be helpful to help you see the point. Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any kingdom. Righteousness exalts a nation, a goy, a Gentile. But sin is a disgrace to any kingdom. Le'umim, gathering of peoples. Think about this for the nation of America. Sin is a disgrace to any kingdom, all the kingdoms. But righteousness lifts up that nation. Now, we're going to come back to that concept about the Gentiles being the sea, Gentile nations being the sea. Sorry, Gentile kingdoms being the sea. Isaiah 17, 12, and 13. Alas, the uproar of many Amim, peoples, who roar like the roaring of the seas, and the rumbling of kingdoms, le'umim, who rush on like the rumbling of mighty waters. The le'umim, the kingdoms, rumble on like the rumbling of many waters. He says it over and over again. So I've translated it here for you so you can see the Hebrew words. Uproar of many Amim, who roar like the roaring of the seas, the rumbling of le'umim, who rush on like the rumbling of mighty waters. The le'umim rumble on like the rumbling of mighty waters. If you don't get it now, you don't get it. You're not going to get it. The Gentile kingdoms are like the sea. And what promise did God give Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob? I will make your children like the stars of the sky and the what? Sand of the sea. Because the sand of the sea is the boundary that says you can go this far and no farther. That's the job of the Jews. The Jews are there as a boundary for the Gentile nations. You can sin, you can cast up your garbage from the bottom, all you want. But once you get to the Jews, you're done. The sea stops. It's over. Think about that. The waves keep coming in. All day, every day, all night. They keep coming in. But they stop at the Jews. They can go no farther than the Jews. That's why the Jewish people, and I mean this individually as well, that people sin and they do stupid things and they cast up their muck from the bottom and they just throw garbage everywhere in their life with sin and with foolishness. But then they meet a Jew, and then it's like a stumbling rock that they have to get over, and they can't get past that Jew. And this happens to me all the time. I don't know if it happens to any other Jewish people, but it happens to me all the time. Gentiles and people will just do all kinds of stupid, crazy stuff. And then they meet me, and I'll say one little thing, or my wife, by the way, will say one little thing, and everything stops, and they can't get past it. And their whole life changes until they deal with that thing. So, this is a big principle in a very small picture, that the sea stops at the Jews, the sand of the sea. All right. Now, the kingdoms, there's a lot of them. All the kingdoms. Kol ha-le'umim. All of the kingdoms. There are many. And God tells us about them. And God defines them for us. We know that there are 70 nations, goyim, in Genesis chapter 10. But kingdoms is different. Kingdoms is bigger. You can have many Gentiles in one kingdom because it's a gathering of peoples. You might have 123, oh, I can't remember, 127. You might have 127 nations, goyim, that gather together into one kingdom. Do you know where that is? That's in chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Esther. Esther, the king of Ahasuerus, he is the leader of the Medo-Persian Empire, and it says there's 127 provinces or Gentiles gathered into his kingdom. So you can have a lot of different Gentile nations gathered into one kingdom. So we're going to go to the book of Daniel. And if you don't know this very foundational, I dread calling it a prophecy because Daniel was not a prophet. Daniel was a prophet, but he was not in the prophets in the Bible. If you look in the Bible, in the Jewish Bible, he's not in the prophets. He's in the writings, in the Ketuvim. He was a prophet. Obviously, he was a prophet. He was a seer. But so is Abraham and David, and they're not in the prophets. So he gave prophecies, he saw things, he saw prophecies, but he is not one of the prophets. So, in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar, this filthy, disgusting, pagan worshiper of himself, he worshipped himself as a god, wanted everybody else to worship him as a god, he sees a dream, and God speaks to him in a dream and shows him the future. And I'm going to just skip through it. When Daniel translates the dream to him, because the king says, translate the dream, seers, or I'll kill you. And they say, okay, tell us the dream. And he says, no, just tell me it and then tell me the translation. And they say, that's impossible. Are you out of your mind, oh king, great king? And then somebody, one of them goes, you know, there is a guy. There's this Jewish dude. And he might be able to do it. So they bring Daniel in, and he does it. And in verse 31, he says, you, O king, were looking, and behold, there was a statue, a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome, amazing. The head of that statue was fine gold, its breast and its arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued looking until a stone was cut out without hands. This is the kingdom. This stone cut out without hands is not just the Messiah, it's the kingdom. And it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay. That's when the stone came. It came in the days of the feet, so to speak, in the days of the feet. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so you couldn't even find a trace. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. That's the kingdom. So there are 4 kingdoms here. There's a 5th that's a little teeny tiny thing, and then there's the kingdom. So you have Babylon as the head of gold, Medo-Persia is the arms and breasts of silver, Greece is the loins, the reproductive organs, and the belly. That's Greece. And then Rome is the legs of iron, and then Rome revised, like Rome coming back. I used to call it re-Rome. Rome coming back is the iron and clay. Now, he interprets it in verse 36. Now we're going to tell the interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. He says he gave you the malchut, the kingdom. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he's given them all into your hand, and he's caused you to rule over all of them. You are the head of gold. You are the king of kings. You are the king over the kingdom. But God is the one who gave it to you. Verse 39, and after you there will arise another kingdom inferior to you, then another 3rd kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. It does not say that about Medo-Persia. It says there will be another kingdom inferior to you that will come. That's Medo-Persia. That's the Persians, Darius and Koresh, Cyrus. But he doesn't say they'll rule over the whole earth. He does say that about Greece, which is the belly and reproductive organs of this idol. Verse 40, then there will be a 4th kingdom, as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron crushes and shatters everything. That's the Pax Romana. That's Roman peace. Pax Romana means Roman peace, the peace of Rome. Pax means peace, and Romana is Rome. And this is what they would erect these huge banners after they slaughtered everybody. They would just anybody, everybody. They torture them and slaughter them. And then they put up these banners that say, Pax Romana, you are now under the peace of Rome. This has never stopped. This has never stopped. This has gone on, unabated. Now, I know you as a Gentile, if you're a Gentile, you don't know this. You don't live it. You don't feel it. But we as Jews do, because we've been chased out of every nation on earth by the Pax Romana, by the Roman peace. And it shatters everything. It's like a rod of iron that just breaks and shatters everything. That's how God sees it. And then it says in verse 41, and in that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it will be divided, a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of the iron. And who's the iron? Rome. It will have in it the toughness of Rome, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. And as the toes of the feet, how many toes are there? There's 10 toes. So this is a 10-headed thing. It's a 10-headed beast, if you will. It's a beast with 10 heads. And you see that again in the book of Revelation. You also see it elsewhere, but it's very clear in the book of Revelation. This is what it's talking about. It's talking about these 10 toes. And as the toes of feet were partly of iron, partly of pottery, some of the kingdom will be strong, and some of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men. But they won't adhere to each other. In other words, they're going to fight with each other. They're going to be brothers, but fighting. Even as iron does not combine with pottery. And now, here's the most important few words in this entire vision or prophecy. In the days of those kings. The days of what kings? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then whatever else is after, the 10 things? No. In the days of those 10 toes, in the days of those kings, the 10 toes, which is what he's talking about. In the days of those 10 toes, which he now calls kings, there are 10 kings. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. In the days of those kings, those 10 kings, will come God's kingdom. This is the one thing that Christians cannot get their head wrapped around. When you're talking about, quote, end times prophecy, which is a phrase that is not in the Bible that I hate. There's no such thing as end times prophecy. There's prophecy about the day of the Lord. Period. So when people are talking about the end times, which is also not a phrase in the Bible, it says the day of the Lord, or in that day. When people are talking about that stuff to come, what they do is they separate what's called the birth pangs, or what you might know as the tribulation, from the kingdom. They are not separate. They are the same time, the same thing. It's just that the very beginning of the kingdom is the days of those 10 kings, which is the birth pangs, or what you might know as the tribulation. They are the same. In the days of those 10 kings will come God's kingdom. God will set up his kingdom. Now, if you can get your head wrapped around this, it will really help you to understand, quote, prophecy. It will really help you understand end times things. It will really help you understand eschatology, the study of last days. It will really help you understand the day of the Lord. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush that stone, that kingdom, will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it itself will endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold, the The great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. So here I have on this timeline what he saw. I've tried to make it as simple as I can, but this is what he saw. He saw the kingdom of Babylon. I have it in gold. Then he saw the kingdom of Persia, which I have in silver or gray. Then the kingdom of Greece, which is the one that we need to deal with. And this is the one that nobody wants to deal with. And it's the one I've been trying to deal with for almost 30 years. And it's the one that Messianic Jews don't want to touch. Because, well, I'll talk about the why in a little bit. So Greece is, I put the color of bronze as close as I could. And then comes this fourth one, Rome. Now Rome is Edom in Judaism. And this is the foundational doctrine that I want to help you to understand today. That it's not like some weird doctrine or some like offshoot of the teachings of Judaism. This is foundational Jewish understanding. As it comes from, way back in Genesis chapter 25, in this prophecy that God gave to Rivkah, that Rome is Edom. They're the same person. They're the same kingdom. Le'um. So here's just two short little blurbs from Judaism about this. I could give you a million of them, but these are two that I like because they're nice and sweet and short and simple. I like simple. Edom, the nation supposedly descended from Esav, was also a symbol for Israel's eternal enemy. Edom participated in the destruction of the first temple. Now, I would read that and go, what gives them the right to say that? Where does it say in the Bible that Edom participated in the destruction of the first temple? And their legendary descendants, the Romans, destroyed the second temple. Herod, the despised agent of Rome, was an Edomite. When Rome embraced Christianity, now here's what Christians cannot stand to think about. And I'm sorry I have to say it that way, because it's repulsive for most Christians to even think about this. Your root, the breasts at which you suck as a baby, as a Hellenized normative Christian, are Rome. That's why it's called Roman Christianity. And I'm not talking about, well, yeah, that's the Roman Catholic Church. That has nothing to do with us. Oh, yes, it does. Because that's where the whole Roman and Greek influence came into the body of Messiah. And it happened very early, like around 90 to 100. The year 90 to 100 of the Common Era. That early. It didn't start with what's his name, the emperor in 335 who, made Christianity the religion of Rome. Constantine. Thank you, Doug. Constantine. It didn't start there. It started way before him. 200 years before him. It started around the year 90 to 100, after they'd slaughtered all the Jews and got them out of Israel. Then they were free to do and say whatever they wanted. And when I say they, I'm talking about the body of Gentiles who were believing in Jesus. In Yeshua, maybe, but more likely in Christ, in this Hellenized God-man, which sort of replaced the Jewish Messiah. That's a whole other subject. I don't want to get too deep into that. But the root of the body of Messiah is Rome. It just is. And I'm talking about even Messianic Jews. Messianic Jews who get their training from Christian sources and from Christian Bible colleges cannot help but, like a baby, suck at those breasts that have been putting out their doctrine that comes from Hellenism, from Greco-Roman sources, for almost 2,000 years. You can't help it. And if that happens, what it does is it pollutes the clear Jewish understanding of the Bible. So that then your view changes from a Jewish view to a Hellenized view. So when it says, when Rome embraced Christianity, this is huge. This is a huge subject. It's not like, oh look, Constantine made Christianity the Roman religion. Let's do that. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the ways of Rome spreading throughout the entirety of what we call, quote, Christianity. When Rome embraced Christianity, Edom then became a symbol for Christian Rome, and then for Christianity in general. Now, you don't have to believe me yet. You don't have to believe me yet. Now, this is from the Encyclopedia of Jewish Symbols by Ellen Frankel and Betsy Platkin-Tuch. It's in the article entitled Esau, page 49. Now, here's another one. I really like this one also. The Encyclopedia of the Jewish Religion by Zvi Werblowski. I love this book. It's under the article entitled Esav, or Esau, page 131. He says, the name Esau, or Edom, they're interchangeable, is used as an eponym for Rome. It's that simple. You want to say Rome in the Talmud? You don't say Rome. You say Edom. That's what he's saying. It's that simple. It's a code word. In medieval Hebrew literature, for any anti-Jewish regime, Christianity in particular, any anti-Jewish regime, Christianity in particular. Christianity is an anti-Jewish regime? Christianity is an anti-Jewish regime? Messianic belief is an anti-Jewish regime? Hebrew Christianity is an anti-Jewish regime? Messianic Judaism as a whole is an anti-Jewish regime? If this doesn't trouble you, you're not thinking about it very clearly. You need to think about this. I mean, or you could just say that, well, what this guy is saying is stupid. It's, it's big, broad. He's painting with a broad brush, and it's kind of ridiculous. But it's not. Because Greece will rule over the whole earth, including America. Unless that stopped. Except it never stopped. It was absorbed into Rome. It sort of morphed into Rome. Rome didn't come to Greece and destroy them in battle. They just absorbed them and kind of added to their nonsense, their filth. They just added to it. And you notice, what's the biggest kingdom in this statue? It's the legs. They're long. This is not by accident. That's why God showed it to him the way he showed it to him. He showed it to him as a head, as Babylon as the head, because the head is where the thoughts are, that's where the glory is, that's where the face is, the king. It's glorious, it's beautiful, it's awesome. And the arms, the strength, the might, the work of the arms, and all that strength is here. That's Medo-Persia. They were very, very, very strong. But they didn't last long. And so it doesn't go on it's not very long, it's not very big. But then comes Greece, which is the reproductive organs and the gut, the belly. And that becomes Rome.
The heart.
Yes, the belly in Judaism is the heart. Sorry, I didn't say that. Thank you, Doug. That's correct. So Rome then comes as these strong legs that are long. And it goes on a long time. 2,000 years long time. Leading right to the feet, which is here. In the days of those 10 kings, God will set up his kingdom. Well, who are those 10 kings? They're the 10 toes, which are Rome and clay. Partly Rome and partly clay. Partly Rome. That means Rome never stopped. It goes all the way to the end. And you, I hate to say it, but you and me are highly influenced by those legs and by the reproductive organs and heart and belly of Greece. Whether you want to believe it or not, it's just the way it is. Now, if you want to deal with this, you can deal with it. If you don't have to. Now, what he says in the prophecy to Rivkah, what God says in the prophecy to Rivkah, is that the older will serve the younger. Edom will serve Judah. Yeah? So now we're going to look at the kingdom of Edom. The kingdom of Edom. And Edom is Rome. Greece, Rome. Now, they say Rome, but that's because there was no more Greece, really. There was no big Greek kingdom by the time the Talmud was written and the Midrash and the Mishnah. There was Rome. That's the Roman kingdom. It was already in existence. And look, it started before the time of Yeshua. The kingdom of Rome began about the year 100 BCE. Greece went up to about 100 BCE. The end of it, right toward the end of it, was the story of the Maccabees about Hanukkah. And that sort of ended the Greek kingdom, which became the Roman kingdom. And then it's just never stopped. So let's look at some verses about Edom. Who is Edom in the Bible? I mean, why do the Jews, what gives them the right to say that Edom is Rome? Who says? Well, just historically, you can see that it never stopped. So 2 Chronicles chapter 21, this is a picture about the future that was acted out in the time of Yehoram. 2 Chronicles 21, verse 8. Verse 7. This is the time of David, the house of David. Yet the Lord was not willing to destroy the house of David because of the covenant which he'd made with David. So there's this king of Judah, Yehoram. He's not very smart. He's not very good. But he does all these horrible things. But because of David being so righteous and setting up a good kingdom, God wasn't willing to destroy the house of David and get rid of Yehoram entirely. So, verse 8, in his days, Edom revolted against the rule of Judah and set up a king over themselves. Edom revolted against Judah. Let's say Esav and Jacob, because Jacob is Israel. In his days, Esav revolted against Jacob, Israel, and set up a king over themselves. Not God, not the king, their own king. This is a picture of the false Messiah. Psalm 137. Now here's the verse where those passages said that Edom participated in the destruction of the first temple. I don't know that that's true. Might be, but I don't know that it is. Psalm 137 was written before there was a temple. So the whole thing's prophetic anyway. There was no temple. So it's not talking about what happened. It's not historical. It's prophetic. There was no temple. So how can there be a psalm written about the temple being destroyed? The temple was in existence for 430 years before it was destroyed. Or 480, I can't remember. I think it's 430. 430 years before it was destroyed. And this was written by the singers that David got in the temple. So this is way before that. Psalm 137, verse 7. Remember, O Lord, against the children of Edom. The children of Edom. Well, who are the children of Edom? Who's Edom? Edom is Esav. And he had children. And in the future, they have children. And these prophets singing in the temple say, Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, who said, Raise it, not raise means bring up, R-A-I-S-E, but R-A-Z-E means bring down. Just the opposite, but they sound the same. Raise it to its very foundation. Who said that? Who said gut the temple and Judaism? The sons of Edom. The sons of Edom. Christianity. I hate to say it like that, but that is the truth. That for 2,000 years, the regime that is anti-Semitic at its core, at war with Israel, Christianity, has said, bring that Jewish house to the ground. You may not feel it, but I feel it every time I walk into a church. I'm sorry, but I do. Every time I walk into a Messianic congregation, I feel it. And I don't think it's because I'm different. I think it's just because I believe this stuff. I believe what the Bible says about it. I believe God set it up this way, and I believe it.
Your eyes are open.
My eyes might be open. I think they are, but that's not for me to say. But I believe what this says. I believe that there is a leumim, a kingdom, a leom, a kingdom that is Rome, that is Greece, that has never stopped. And its whole desire is to get what Israel has and to destroy them. And it's never stopped. And it has infected God's own body. What you might call Christianity. I don't like that word because it's very, very deceptive. But whatever that is, the body of Messiah is full of this. And it wants to raise the temple, bring it down to its foundation, gut it. And that's why they say, God, remember this. Remember these children of Edom who are saying this. Remember, there's no temple in existence when they're singing this. They're doing this in the tabernacle that David had. Verse 8, O daughter of Babylon, you devastated one. Now, why did they bring up Babylon after bringing up Edom and talking about the destruction of the temple? Because those are the two guys that destroyed the temple. Babylon destroyed the first temple, which didn't exist when this was written, and then centuries later, Rome destroyed the second temple. O daughter of Babylon, you devastated one, how blessed will be the one who repays you with the recompense with which you paid us. How happy, how blessed will be the one who seizes and dashes your little ones against the rock. What rock? The rock that grew big and shattered all the kingdoms, and then grew and filled the whole earth. The kingdom. So, there are two kingdoms going on here. There's the kingdom of Edom, and then there's the kingdom of Israel, which isn't here yet, which is God's kingdom. Isaiah chapter 34. Remember, we're looking at Edom. This is a passage about the day of the Lord, the birth pangs in the day of the Lord. And it says in 34:5, my sword is satiated in heaven. Behold, it will descend for judgment on Edom and upon the people whom I've devoted to destruction. What does that tell you? That tells you that when the Messiah comes in judgment, from heaven down to earth, in judgment, Edom still exists. But if you look at history, it'll tell you that Edom no longer exists. So that can't be true. It says Herod was one of the last of the Edomites, and then it petered out and gone. Nope. It's right here. And it's gigantic. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood, verse 6. It is sated with fat and the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams, for the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah. Bozrah was in Edom, the land of Edom, and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Wild oxen shall fall with them, and young bulls with strong ones,
It's not talking about animals, it's talking about people. But it pictures them as animals. Thus their land will be soaked with blood and dust become greasy with fat, for the Lord has a yom, a day of vengeance. This is the day of the Lord. A year of recompense for the cause of what? Zion, Israel. God does the judgment on the world because he wants to pay back what people did to Israel, his babies, his kids. Isaiah 64. This is also about the coming of the Messiah from heaven with sword to destroy everybody who's evil. Same thing, 64:1 through 5. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down, that the mountains might quake at your presence. Oh, that's weird. As the fire kindles the brushwood, as fire causes water to boil, to make your name known to your enemies, that the nations may tremble at your presence. When you did awesome things which we did not expect, you came down, the mountains quaked at your presence. This is really strange. Verse 4, from of old they have not heard or perceived by ear, neither has the eye seen a God besides you. So I'm this definitely picturing God coming down, right? I have the wrong passage here. It's chapter 63, verses 1 through 5, because it mentions Edom, but it's the same exact thing. It's the same exact thing, only this mentions Edom, 63, 1 through 5. Who is this who comes from Edom with garments of glowing colors? That doesn't mean he's got pretty clothes on. That means they're covered in blood. With garments of glowing colors from Bozrah. This one who is majestic in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength. It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red and your garments like the one who treads the winepress? Because that's what I did. I tread the winepress. I smashed the grapes with my feet, and the blood got all over my garments. This is the coming of the Messiah in judgment. And who does he come to judge? Esav, Rome. I am not saying that God is going to kill all Christians. If that's what you heard me say, you're not listening. And I've had people say that to me. So you think God hates all Christians, he's going to come and destroy them all? It's because you didn't listen to anything I said. You're not hearing my heart, you're not hearing my words, and you're not hearing the pictures that are painted in the Bible. I'm saying that this kingdom is going to be destroyed and crushed. But here's the problem. That kingdom is in us. We got to get it out. That kingdom that wants to destroy God's temple and Judaism, it's the same spirit that makes you want to say, some of you, where does it say Judaism in the Bible? That's where that's coming from. And it closes your ears so you can't hear something very simple. And it has spent 2,000 years doing it, so it's not going to go away overnight. It takes a while to root this out of you. So, God's going to come and destroy all of Edom. Jeremiah 49. And again, I'm going to say the same point, that this means that in the day of the Lord, there's an Edom. So Edom was not destroyed. It's still going on. But I'm telling you, if you read Christian commentaries, they all say the same thing. Edom petered out, it was destroyed, it's no longer. You don't have to worry about it. It doesn't exist. Totally not true. Jeremiah 49:20. Therefore hear the plan of the Lord which he has planned against Edom, and his purposes which he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Teman is also in the land of Edom. Surely they will drag them off, even the little ones of the flock. Surely he will make their pasture desolate because of them. The earth is quaked at the noise of their downfall. There is an outcry. The noise of it has been heard at the Reed Sea. Behold, he will mount up and swoop like an eagle, and spread out his wings against Bozrah, that's the capital of Edom. And the hearts of the mighty men of Edom in that day will be like the heart of a woman in birth pangs. This is during the birth pangs. And God is going to bring birth pangs to all the Leumim. That's why it's called birth pangs, because Israel is going to give birth to the Messiah. But while Israel gives birth to the Messiah, it's going to be destruction for all the nations.
Ezekiel 25. I don't think I want to do this one. Because basically what it says is God will judge Edom. Not just judge Edom, but judge Edom through Israel. God is going to judge Edom through Israel. All right, let's go to Ezekiel 36. This basically says the same thing, but I think I can make a good transition from this verse into the next thing I want to say. Ezekiel 36, verse 5. Surely in the fire of my kinah, my jealousy, I have spoken against the rest of the goyim, the rest of nations, and against all Edom. Now, you're going to see this again, this doubling of Edom and all the nations. Edom and all the nations. Here it says, all the nations and Edom. It's poetic repetition. What it's saying is that Edom is all the nations. That's what it's saying. That this is all the nations, Edom. It's huge. It's not one little people group. I have spoken against the rest of the goyim and against all Edom, who appropriate my land, who grab my land, Israel. And it's not just, the physical land, it's the kingdom. For themselves. Edom, the Hellenistic, Greco-Roman influence of Edom that has gotten into the body of Messiah, wants that for themselves. The Roman root of the church wants what God gave to us as Jews. They want it, and they'll do anything to get it. They will invent replacement theology and kick the Jews out and make themselves the inheritors of the blessing. They will say that they're the true Israel. They'll say, Judah is the Jews, but Israel is the Gentile believers in Yeshua. It's all the same thing. It comes from this desire of Edom to get that blessing. I want that blessing that you gave to the Jews. It's never stopped.
Old Testament, New Testament.
It's never stopped. Against all Edom who appropriate my land for themselves as a possession with wholehearted joy and with scorn of soul to drive it out for a prey. With wholehearted joy and with scorn of soul to get rid of it as a prey. We're going to take it in battle. Well, what's it? It is Israel. So, at the same time that this spirit of what I'm calling Hellenism, this spirit of Hellenism, which is in God's body, at the same time that it wants that blessing that God gave to the Jewish people, with scorn of soul, they want to drive Israel out and say, it's mine. Now, this can filter down into very small things, into very small beliefs and very small words and very small statements. Like, oh, God has given us the blessings of Israel. I've been in churches where that has been happily, joyfully said. And then they hate the Jews. Oh, they would never say they hate the Jews. They would say, we love Israel. No, you don't. Not if you don't do the works of Abraham, which was doing Judaism. You abhor blood sacrifice. You abhor doing Jewish things. You abhor all these Jewish, we are allowed to eat pork now. You abhor keeping kosher. You abhor all the Jewish things. That is this spirit. That's what it is. And it filters down into many statements and many songs and many words and many teachings among the body of Messiah, even in Messianic Judaism. back to our verse. 2 kingdoms, le'umim, are in your womb, and 2 peoples will be separated from your heart, your bowels, and a kingdom from another kingdom will be stronger, and the older will serve the younger. The kingdom of Greece, Hellenism, began in 333 BCE by Alexander the Great, became the kingdom of Rome. It did not end. It just morphed into the kingdom of Rome to create, quote, the Greco-Roman Empire. I didn't invent this phrase, Greco-Roman Empire. I didn't come up with that. This has been around for 2,000 years. Why do they say Greco-Roman? Because it is Greco-Roman. It's a morphing of the two. It's a blending of the two. It's just that Rome was much, their gods and their politics was much stronger and took over the whole earth. But remember, it said that in the prophecy that the dream that Nebuchadnezzar saw, that the kingdom of Greece will rule over the whole world. It never ended, and it was never destroyed by another kingdom, the Greco-Roman Empire. Now, Edom is that Hellenism. Hellenism is a word that means way of the Greek. Helena means Greece. So Hellenism is the way of the Greek. As opposed to the other kid that was in her belly, in her womb, Jacob, Israel. They were fighting before they were even born. They're still fighting. You have to take a side in this. You have to take a side in this. This is the real battle of life. It's not, is Trump going to be elected or is Biden going to be elected? That's not our battle. I mean, it's just other nonsense. There have always been kingdoms that came and went. There's always been presidents that were elected and were, taken away. And there's always been leaders of countries in Europe, that kings and potentates that rose and fell. But what has never ended is this one battle between Edom and Jacob. Now, in this book, when all the pictures are restored, I have a 100-page chapter that I hate when people read it, because they'll read through the whole book happily and then they'll hit the chapter on Hanukkah and they're done. They just don't want to read anymore. And because I presented in as factual and crisp and clean a way as I possibly can this fight between Hellenism and Judaism. And it's all summed up in this festival of Hanukkah that's coming up in 3 weeks. There are a lot of Messianic Jews who will not listen to my teachings. And the reason is, they say things like, you're still teaching that same old stuff. Because I dare to say the word Hellenism. And I dare to talk about the image of Christ. Not of Yeshua, of Christ. Of the Greco-Roman God that has replaced Yeshua the Messiah, the Mashiach, the Christ. Jesus the Christ. Not a guy named Christ. But this image came out of Greece. That's where it came from. All the way back here, before the time of Yeshua, the Greco-Roman Empire, the Grecian Empire, Alexander and the Grecian Empire, from about 333 BCE to around 100 BC, spread this image of this Hellenized God-man. And it was the image of what the world thinks is Jesus. So Messianic Jews hate this. They don't like to even approach it or talk about it. Why? Because it's a war. It puts us at odds with Christians as Jews. It puts us as Jews at odds with Christians. But we're believing in the Yeshua, the same Yeshua they believe in. So we have to have commonality, not not fighting. And so it's very, very difficult to understand this age-old fight that's never ended and still love and have love for the body of Messiah. And admittedly, I didn't. I was angry. And I didn't know how to find anybody talking about this to put them together, the world of the Jew and the world of the believers, but not Hellenism. And nobody could help me with that. So God did it and broke me. Just snapped me in half and changed me. It had to start with me. It just had to be me. So I did. I changed the way I think. I changed the way I feel. So there's a relationship between these two kingdoms. Now, what are these kingdoms? I mean, like if you had to hone them down, I've already said that Hellenism and Judaism. That's true. But what does that really mean to us? It means spiritual world and material world. That's the way the Jews put it, and I like that. They say it's basically the spiritual world and the material world, the materialism, materialistic thinking, materialistic living. And I believe that's absolutely accurate. And I believe that it's confirmed by the words of Yeshua. And these are powerful words because they're right out of Judaism. And they get serious. I mean, he goes at it, and he just keeps hammering and hammering and hammering at this point. And remember, he's talking to Jews. He's a Jew in Israel talking to Jews in a Jewish language, in idioms that are Jewish that the Jews can understand. You can't. Unless you've learned them, which you might have, which is good. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll hold the one and despise the other. You can't serve God, and there's no such word as mammon, by the way. It's matmon, and it means treasure in Hebrew. Matmon. Why they softened it to mammon is the same reason they changed everything from Judaism in the Bible. Same reason. You cannot serve God in matmon. For this reason I say to you, don't be anxious for your life, as what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're, or for your body, what you're going to put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They don't sow, they don't reap, they don't gather into barns, and your heavenly Father feeds them, and you're worth a lot more than they are. And which of you, by being anxious, can add one single cubit, that's 18 inches, to his life's span? And why are you worried about clothing? He keeps hammering on clothing. Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They don't toil, they don't spin. But I say to you, even Solomon in all of his glory didn't clothe himself like one of these flowers. But if God so arrays the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more do so for you? You have so little understanding. Faith. It's not, O thou of little faith. That's ridiculous. It's you men of such little understanding. Don't you think? Don't you use your brain and your heart? That's what he's saying. It's hard. It's harsh. Quit worrying then, saying, what am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? With what shall I clothe myself? Oh, what am I going to do? I don't have food and clothes. And then he says this. That's what the Gentiles worry about. That's what the Gentiles worry about. What are you doing? You're acting like a Gentile, Jews. Worried about your food and your drink and your clothing and your house and your stuff. Don't be anxious saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we clothe ourselves? And you think I'm mocking? I am mocking. Yes, I mock it because that's what he's doing. For all these things, the Gentiles. Oh, I thought Jesus didn't say that. I thought Yeshua never said Gentiles and Jews. That's what the Goyim were worried about, Jews. What are you doing? Don't you have any understanding of God at all?
And then he says, seek first the kingdom, the malchut. First he defines the kingdom of Edom, the materialism, the gimme the stuff, the greed. That's Edom. Greed. The desire to live this life. Look, we only have one life. YOLO. You only live once. Give it to me now. That's Edom. YOLO is Edom. You only live once is Edom. It's disgusting. You only live once, but what about the kingdom? You're supposed to be living like the kingdom's here now. If you have the attitude of, you only live once, I'm going to get what I want now. I'm going to get it good. I'm going to get all the good stuff now. I'm going to live well. I'm going to show them. I'm going to live well. That's how I'm going to take my vengeance on those people, those horrible people, by living well now. That's Edom. Instead of what Jacob was like. And by the way, Jacob became the richest guy on the planet. Which is what Yeshua says. Seek first the kingdom, and all this stuff will be added to you. That's what happened with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They became the richest guys on the planet because they didn't care about it. It says in Proverbs, if you run after money, it makes itself wings like a bird and flies away. So if you want to frustrate yourself, be like Edom and go after it. But you certainly can't serve God and be interested in God and the kingdom that's coming, the Jewish kingdom that's coming, and live like that Jewish kingdom is here and worry about stuff. You can't. I've tried. It doesn't work. For the Gentiles eagerly seek these things. But seek first his kingdom. That's the day of the Lord, the Malchut HaShemayim, and its righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Those are the two kingdoms, spiritual and non-spiritual. Let me check something here. Okay. Romans 9:11. We haven't even gotten back to the second narrative in Genesis about Jacob and Esav and the stolen, he quotes, stolen blessing. Okay, because most people think that Jacob stole that blessing, but he didn't. God gave it to him. God promised it to him. His mom just had to teach him how to get it. And that blessing wasn't material things. It was knowing God. Romans 9, verse 11. In chapter 9 of Romans, it's all about relationships between Jews and Gentiles. That's what it's all about. In Romans 9, it has about the olive tree, and that the Gentile believers, and it calls them Gentiles, are grafted into a Jewish olive against nature. 9:11. Well, verse 10. Not only this, but there was Rivkah, when she had conceived by one man, our father Yitzchak, for though the twins were not yet born and they haven't done anything, good or bad. They haven't done anything. They haven't even been born yet. In order that God's purpose according to choice might stand, not because of works, not because of doing stuff, but because of him who calls, it was said to her, the older will serve the younger, just as it is written. Now he says something weird. He says, the older will serve the younger. And in the same way, Jacob I have loved before they're born. Esav I have hated. Esav I have hated. Edom I have hated. Before they're born, they're fighting with each other. And God loves one of them and hates the other. Hates. Sinah in Hebrew. Hates the other. It doesn't say, and God is somewhat partially displeased with Edom. He hates him. Why? Because he wants the world. Why? I don't know. I don't know.
But he does. You need to think about this. Do you have the desires that Jacob had? That Israel had? The kingdom? The Jewish kingdom? Or do you have in you the desires that Edom had? For the things of life? Rome. You better think about this. Because God hates Edom. See why I didn't want to teach this? God hates. Oh, Michael Washer said, God hates me. And I'm going to probably have people who are so ignorant and don't pay attention and will say something like that to me. Why did you say God hates Christians? Why did you say God? It's so arrogant to say something like that. I'm the one doing the smiling here. But it's true. It's true what God says. God hates Edom. He hates Rome. He hates the ways of Greece, of Hellenism. Even before they're born. Now you can choose to believe that or not believe that. But I want you to notice that in Romans chapter 9, it says, the older will what? Serve. Serve. Like a slave, serve. The younger, the older, Edom, will serve the Jews. Oh, there goes Michael Washer saying, get the Jews under my feet. Get the Christians under my feet. That's what God said. So we're going to look at this. I want to make it very clear what I'm saying. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, there's a picture that shows the same thing. That when David was king, and David remembers a picture of King Messiah, he's the closest picture that we have in the Bible, except for Jacob, of Yeshua. Those are the two pictures that we have in the Bible that are the closest to the Messiah, is Jacob or Israel and David. David more because he was the king. And in, 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel 8, verse 14. David put garrisons in Edom. That means forts in Edom. In all Edom, he put forts, garrisons. And all the Edomites became servants to David. And the Lord helped David wherever he went. All of Edom, think about it like this. All of Christianity became servants to King Messiah in the kingdom. If you think that you are serving King Messiah because you're in the church, no, you're not. You think you are, but you're not. Because Abraham did the law, and you're not doing the law. And if you're not doing the law, you're not doing the works of Abraham, and you don't have faith, and you don't have understanding of what God said to do and what God did through Yeshua. You may understand a tiny bit about it, but you're not serving God. You're not an Aved, a servant of God. Not yet. Not yet. Let's look at Amos chapter 9. Now, these are verses that I've taught on many, many, many times because they're foundational. This chapter, or this set of verses in Amos is foundational to understand the New Testament in its entirety. You cannot understand the New Testament unless you know the root of it, which is Judaism, and you cannot understand the relationship between Jews and Gentiles in the body of Messiah unless you understand this. Amos chapter 9. 11 and 12. In that day, in what day? In the day of the Lord, I will raise up the fallen Sukkot David, Sukkah of David, and wall up its breaches and raise up its ruins. Sukkah doesn't have ruins, so it's obviously not talking about a Sukkah. And raise up its ruins and rebuild it as in days of old, so that they, I guess it's Israel, because it's the Sukkah of David, may possess, own, like slaves, own the remnant of Edom
and all the nations who are called by my name. There's that double thing I talked about earlier, that it'll say all the nations and the rest of Edom. All the nations and those of Edom. It's poetry, it's repeating. That means all the nations are Edom. So this is quoted, repeated, and taught, and ignored by the whole world in Acts chapter 15. Completely ignored. Jacob, everybody loves to talk to me about Acts chapter 15, but nobody understands it when they talk to me about it, because they don't think about that he's quoting Amos chapter 9. They just ignore it. And they say, the Gentiles are only required 4 things. It's in Acts chapter 15. But they don't read the rest of it. In verse 15, well, he says, give the Gentiles these 4 things, and here's why. Verse 15, with this the words of the prophets agree. After these things I will return, and I will raise the Sukkot David which has fallen, and I will rebuild its ruins, and I will restore it, in order so that the rest of mankind may seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who are called by my name. So he changes the words somewhat. Says the Lord who makes these things known of old. So, don't trouble the going, just give him these 4 things. Why? Because of Amos 9. And what he's saying in Amos 9 is really simple. I'm going to invite Edom into the Jew world. That's what he's saying. I'm going to invite the Gentiles into the Jewish world, into the world of his brother Israel. We want to invite the Gentiles in, but they have to come into our world. We don't have to go into theirs. The Jewish world is the world into which the Christians or Gentile believers, Edom, is invited in, so that they can be possessed, owned by Israel, which means so they can serve the Lord. Where does it go? So that they may seek the Lord. That's what that means. David didn't make them servants like the white people made the black people in America servants, which is disgusting. He made them servants to serve God. So he taught them Judaism, just like Abraham did. And that's what Amos said would happen in the last days, in that day, which aren't even here yet. And that's what Jacob said in Acts chapter 15, saying that's what he was talking about. We are going to do it exactly like it's going to be in the day of the Lord in the future. That's what he was saying. And then right after that it says, because guys, they're going to go, the Gentiles are going to go to the temple, the synagogue every week on Shabbat to hear Moses taught. So let's invite the Gentiles into our world, the Jew world, not the other way around. We do not go and become Christians in the Hellenism and then get Hellenized so that we can be part of the body of Christ. That is exactly the opposite, but that's what's happened. That's what's happened. Whether you want to believe it or see it or understand it or not, it's happened. That Jews have got, that's what Jews for Jesus is. It's Jews who are now Christians going back to Jews saying, oh, come to Christ. Come into the church. That's basically what it is. Now, I'm not saying they're not believers. I'm not saying they're not Jews anymore, but they sure ain't acting like Jews. They're acting like Christians, like Edom. So you can do with that what you want. Now, this thing about serving, Christians, not Christians, Edom will serve David. Edom will serve Israel. I want to read you something from this book called The Kidnapping of Edgardo Mortara. This is what finally put the nail in the coffin of the Roman Catholic Church ruling the earth. this right here, this story. It's a pretty big book, and it's pretty scholarly the way it's written. But what happened was the Pope sent his people, and the church kidnapped a little Jewish boy, 8-year-old Jewish boy. And it blew up. It got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it ended papal rule in Europe. Now, what happened was there was a guy who started a revolt where there was a pretty big Jewish community. All the Jews had been kicked out of Italy numerous times. They came back, they got kicked out again, they came back, because the dukes and the kings and all that would say, you're out, you can come back, you're out, you can come back. And they kept doing this for centuries. So there was a Jewish community that had been built up in Bologna, and there was this Jewish guy, a Gentile guy named Vicini. And Vicini was a lawyer, and there was a court case that came up because of some Jews in Italy, in Bologna, and the court case was about whether the brothers could inherit the money from this Jew who converted to Christianity. That's what the court case was about. And Vicini, watching all the lawyers in all of Italy say, those Jews don't deserve to live, let alone get money, he wrote this paper saying, no, you're wrong, the law says that they can own stuff. And they wanted to crucify him publicly. Well, there was another lawyer who wrote, he was beloved by the church, this other lawyer, and he wrote a paper refuting what Vicini had said, that the Jews have some rights, some basic civil rights. And in this, he said this, in this paper that refuted Vicini's words. Number one, oh, by the way, he's a professor. This guy's he's a legal professor and a lawyer. So the professor went on to enunciate the following basic legal principles. Number one, the Jews in the Papal States are simply slaves to be tolerated. That's number one. That's their foundational belief. We'll tolerate you Jews. Now, in the Papal States, that means the Pope. That means wherever the Pope ruled. That wherever the Pope ruled, wherever Roman Christianity was, the Jews are slaves to be tolerated. Number two, they have no right to share along with Christians in the intestate inheritance of a Christian relative. They can't own anything that Christians deserve. Give me the stuff that those Jews have. This is Edom. Now the next one is hard to follow because it's got some big words in it. I have trouble following it. You might not. Number three, that the Jews themselves, in order to fulfill the nefarious requirements set down by a religion marked by an implacable hatred of Christians, are called upon to treat them with all manner of trickery, treachery, torture, and to work tirelessly to reduce Christians to perpetual, guess what the word is? Slavery. So what he's saying is this, that the Jewish religion is based on tricking and lying and murdering Christians to make them into our slaves. All the Gentiles called by my name will be possessed by Israel. One kingdom will be stronger than the other, and the older, Esav, Edom, will serve the younger. If you think Christianity serves the Jewish kingdom, you're wrong. It's the other way around. You have us under your heel. You have us under your foot. You have for 2,000 years. You're not serving the kingdom. You don't even know what the kingdom is. You're looking for the coming of Christ. We're, in our minds, praying every day for that kingdom to come because that's where our minds are harder at. So the reason I'm reading this is because This happened in the year 1827. This thing was written in 1827. The boy was kidnapped 10 years, 10 years later, in 1858. 1847. 1847 is when this took place, when this was written. No, 1827. 1827. And then in 1858, just a few years later, is when this all happened and the papal rule ended. Now what that means is the Inquisition ended, is what that means. The Inquisition that had been going on for 500 years almost finally ended in 1858. The Inquisition, because of a Jew, a little Jewish 8-year-old boy. And this lawyer, this great Christian lawyer, enumerated these laws that were in existence in papal rule, that the Jews are slaves to be tolerated because in their nefarious religion they want to enslave us, the Christians. Number 4, that the restrictions under which Christians permit Jews residence are entirely necessary in order to avoid the deadly, deadly effects of their Jewish religion. All right, that's pretty late. In the middle of the 1800s. That's crazy. You know, it sounds like it was written in the 1500s, but it wasn't. It's in the 1800s, 17th century, or 19th century. So, here's why I bring this up. I bring this up because God says that Esav, Edom will serve Israel. But that is not the way it's been for the last 2,000 years. For the last 2,000 years, the Jews have been under the foot, under the heel, as slaves, kicked out of every nation and treated like animals by Christianity. Now can you see why I'm saying that Christianity and Edom they're basically the same thing? They're so closely related. You can't remove Edom from Christianity. You can't. The only way to do it is to leave it and go into the Jewish kingdom, into the Jewish world, like Abraham did. Now we're going to go back and look at the rest of the story of Jacob and Esav. Now that you have that background, and I hope I've done a decent job of making it clear that this has nothing to do with what I believe. This is all set up by God, and it has never ended. Genesis 27. Remember, the Bible is a book of pictures. It is not a law book. It is not history. It's a book of pictures of the future. Genesis 27. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but verse 1. Now it came about when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called his older son, Esav, and said to him, verse 2, look, I'm old, I don't know when I'm going to die, so take your gear. He doesn't say, place your hand under my thigh and swear to me. He says, get your bow and your quiver. That means arrows. That means the meat is going to be unclean. There's no such thing as hunting in Judaism. You have to ritually kill an animal by slitting its throat and bleeding it out. If you shoot it with an arrow, it bleeds out from something else. It dies unnaturally. It dies in a way that it makes the meat unkosher, unclean. And it is no longer food. But he's telling his son to do this. Why? Because he wants that food. Even in his deathbed, he wants that food. Take your gear, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And I prepare a savory dish for me, such as I love, and bring it to me so I can eat it, so that my soul may bless you before I die. So he wants to bless Edom. He wants to. Rivka was listening, and he's like, whoa, we can't do that. The blessing's supposed to go to Jacob. So he tells Jacob to go get some baby goats and skin it, kill it, skin it, use that meat to serve Isaac, which is kosher. Use that meat to make the food, and act like Esau, the hairy man. Put the hairy skins on your neck and on your arms, and when you go to him, you better talk like Esav, and make the food like Esav makes and give it to your dad, and he'll bless you. You'll get the blessing. So he does. Verse 12, perhaps my father will feel me, and then I'll be as a liar in his eyes, and I'll bring upon myself a curse and not a blessing. But his mother said to me, May your curse be on me, my son. Listen to my voice and go and do it. So he went and got and brought to his mother, and his mother made the food, kind of like Edom or Esau cooked. Then Rebecca, they put the skins on him and all that. Verse 18. Then he came to his father and said, Avi, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you? First thing he says, who are you? He's blind. Why does he say, who are you? He must not have been talking too much like Esav. Or he knew. He knew. That's what I believe. I believe Isaac knew. Who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I'm Esav, your firstborn. I've done like you told me. Get up and sit up and eat the food so you can bless me. And Isaac said to his son, how'd you get it so quick? And he said, because the Lord your God, Yehovah your God, caused it to happen to me. That's when Isaac knew. Because Esav hated Yahweh. He hated Judaism. He hated the Lord. And that's why the Lord hated him. But he says, Yahweh your God. Well, that sounds like Jacob to me. A Yahweh guy. An Adonai guy. And so Isaac says, Jacob, come here so I can feel you. I think he's messing with him. Please come close so I can feel you, my son, whether you're really my son Esav or not. So Jacob came close to Esav, his father, and he felt him, and he said, now listen, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esav. The mouth is Jewish, but the works are Hellenistic. You don't have to believe me, but I believe that's what Messianic Judaism is now. It's changing. It's getting more toward God's way. But it started as a Christian thing, a Hellenistic thing. The voice, the words are Jew words. Oh, you say Adonai, you say Yeshua instead of Christ, instead of Jesus, and Messiah instead of Christ, and you wear a kippah, and you put a talit on, and you might even know a little Hebrew. The words are Jewish words, the words of Jacob. But the works, the hands, are the works of Esav. You need to think about it. Verse 23, and he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esav's hands. So he blessed him. I think he knew it was him. But it says he didn't recognize him. I think he did that as an act of his will. He knew, I believe he knew it was Jacob. And he was messing with him. He was like testing him. Are you really Jacob? Come here so I can feel you if you're really my son, Esav. Come here. Let's talk. Let me taste that food if it's just like Esav makes. And then he says, you feel like Esav, but you talk like Jacob. I don't recognize you. So I'm going to bless you, Jacob. So he blessed him. And he said, are you really my son, Esav? I am. So he said, bring it to me and I'll eat of my son's game so I can bless you. And he brought it, he ate, and he brought him wine and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, please come close and kiss me, my son. So he came close and he kissed him, and when he smelled the smell of his garments, he blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord, Yahweh, has blessed. not hunting, and not the field itself, not the world, Yahweh, or Yehovah, the Lord. See, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which Yehovah has blessed. Now may God give you, whoever you are talking to me, may God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth. What gives him the right to say, may God give you the dew of heaven? May God give you the fatness of the earth. They're just words. And yet these two guys are willing to kill over it. These words mumbled by some old blind dude. Because they're real. The words are not just words, they're prophecy. They're real. May God give you of the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, the abundance of the grain of the new one. May people serve you. May Amin, Leumim, kingdoms serve you, Jacob. Not Esav. May kingdoms serve you. And Goyim bow down to you. Be master of your brothers. And may your mothers... Who are his brothers, plural? I thought he only had one brother, Esav. So obviously he knows he's not talking to Esav. He's talking prophetically in the future. There's going to be kingdoms and peoples that are going to bow down to Israel. Be master of your brothers. May your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. It came about as soon as Isaac was done. Esav comes running in, and you know what Esav cries about? You know what he cries to his daddy about? Don't you have one blessing left? He wants the stuff that Israel has. He doesn't care about God. He cares about the stuff. So, how are you? Do you care about knowing God, or do you care about the stuff that you can get from it? The fastest growing church in America, denomination of church in America for decades, started in the 70s, was the faith movement, which has nothing to do with faith. It's about give me stuff. It's all about money. From beginning to end, it's all about money. Every teaching always circles around the same thing. God wants you to have an abundant life and give you stuff. It's the greed of Edom who wants the blessing. I have spent so many hours helping Jews to separate themselves from, when they read Deuteronomy, oh, that may be blessed in the field, and blessed in your basket, and blessed in your kneading bowl, and blessed in your life, and blessed in your children. Oh, I want that. To go from that to go into, if you hear the mitzvot, and they talk to you and you hear them, you'll have the blessing of knowing God. They are two different worlds. You need to decide which world you want. Here's what one of the rabbis says about this. The relationship of the kingdoms of the spiritual, Jacob, and the material, Esav. Finally, Isaac blesses Esav that of the fatness of the land shall be your dwelling. But that's what he gave to Isaac. I mean, to Jacob. Of the fatness of the land be your dwelling, and of the dew of heaven above. He already gave that to Jacob. The fat of the land and the dew of heaven themselves having already been given or granted to Jacob. But he says, of the fatness of the land shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of heaven above, because it was given to Jacob, which means Esau has to serve him to get it. And promises him that should the descendants of Jacob sin and become unworthy of their blessings, they will forfeit their mastery over Esav's seed in material affairs. And that's why Roman Catholic Church says we replace Israel with the church. You have forfeited. You have forfeited the blessing in the church, and now it's ours. Because they want the material stuff, but that's not what Jacob wanted in the first place. Jacob wanted the blessing of knowing God. Two different worlds. So Isaac never intended to make Esav the father of the people of the land of Israel. Never thought to bequeath the Holy Land to him.
never considered him heir to, quote, the blessing of Abraham, which was knowing God, not the stuff. There were two distinct blessings in Isaac all along. Esav seems to have sensed this when he cried, "Have you only one blessing, my father?" In other words, don't you have something for me? Intended for his two sons, Jacob was to be given the spiritual legacy of Abraham, while Esav was to be granted the blessing of the material world. So go ahead, get your stuff. If you're a Christian, go get your stuff. If you want to be Esav, go get your stuff. Go be in the faith movement. Go get your abundance. Go get your stuff. You only live once. YOLO. Go get your YOLO. Go get your stuff. God's going to bless you with material things. If you want to be Edom, Esau, Rome. But if you want to be like Jacob, Israel, it's a totally different world altogether. And you can't serve two masters. In Romans chapter 15, Paul quotes 4 different verses to say the same thing. And they say this. One time he says, "Rejoice, Gentiles, with the Jews, among the Jews." And then in Romans 15, later on, after quoting these 4 verses about Gentiles rejoicing among with the Jews, that doesn't mean Jews going in to Christians and worshiping together. That means Gentiles coming into the Jewish world and worshiping with them. After he says that, he proves it. He puts flesh on it. He says, "I've been doing this. Here's how it works." Romans 15, verse 7. No, verse... oh, I put the same verses here. 7:12, 7:12. I'm sorry, this should be verse 26, verse 25. "But now I'm going to Jerusalem serving the holy ones." Serving the holy ones. Who are the holy ones? They're the Messianic Jews. They're the Jews in Jerusalem. And he says this. They're Jews in Jerusalem. For Macedonia and Achaia, guess where that is? Alexander the Great was from his father, Philip of Macedon, Macedonia, which is Greece. Achaia is the other part of Greece, the larger area of Greece. He's talking to Hellenists, and he says, because basically all of the Greek world, the Greeks, have been happy to make a contribution. That's money. Have been happy to make a contribution for the poor among the holy ones in Jerusalem. Yes, they were pleased to do it. They're indebted to them. The Greeks are indebted to Israel, the Jews. Because if the Gentiles have shared in their spiritual things, not their physical things, they are indebted to minister to them also in material things. And that's the bottom line. If you're a believer, if you're a Gentile believer, you have to come into the Jewish world and serve Israel. Give your physical stuff because we gave you the spiritual stuff. We kept the Bible for you. We taught you about how to live for God and what the Torah says. So you're indebted to Israel for that. And so you give physical things, material things. But if you want to be Edom and go after the material things, go for it. And the Lord will bless you. In this up here, in this verse that we keep looking at, it says, "A kingdom, Jacob, Israel, from another kingdom, which is Esav, Edom, will be stronger." Now, Rashi says about that, it will become mightier than the other kingdom. They will not be equal in greatness. When one rises, the other falls. The other will fall. When Edom rises, Israel falls. When Israel rises, Edom will fall. Will fall. If And then he says, on Esav's heel. This is a sign that this one, Esav, will not manage to complete his reign until this one rises up and takes it from him. Now what that means is, Esav will reign, but the kingdom, Israel, will rise up and grab him by the heel and will end his reign. Yeshua said, the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, but seek first his kingdom, the day of the Lord, and its righteousness. Seek this. That is the Jewish kingdom. Seek that first. Don't seek for the stuff. You might get some stuff. You probably will. If you seek first the kingdom. Yeshua said it. I don't really care about it, but he said it. Edom is Hellenism until Jacob rises up. Judaism rises up and takes over the whole earth. The name of this big book, my magnum opus, is when all the pictures are restored. When all the pictures are restored. Well, when is that? The kingdom. That's when it happens. That's when it's going to happen. All of Judaism will be restored. So Edom has to run its course. And then there's that last little 7 years where the 10 toes rise up and Rome comes back. And in the days of those 10 kings, God will set up his kingdom. And it will never, ever end. Now that is the big story, the foundational story that God laid out for us to understand the whole thing, the whole big picture. This is the big picture. If you want to understand the details, you got to understand the big picture first. And this is the big picture. There's a fight between Hellenism and Judaism, and there always will be. So your job as a believer, just like mine, just like everybody else's, as a believer is to get to know God. And the only way to do that is to go in the path of Israel instead of the path of Esav, Edom, who wants the stuff. And it's not going to happen overnight. You don't get rid of greed overnight. It takes a long time. You keep seeking that kingdom and seeking that kingdom and seeing it more and more and clearer every day until you just don't even care about this world, really. It really doesn't make a difference. You know, all the things that I've been talking about, the birth pangs and the day of the Lord, I've been talking about it for 30-some years. Now it's starting to become reality. These 10 kings are starting to form. And it's people have called it one world government. I don't know what else they call it, but now it's got a new name. They've finally put a name to it. It's called the Great Reset. And everybody's talking about it throughout the nations. The Great Reset. It is the, quote, one world government. That's what the Great Reset is. It's now becoming reality. What we've been talking about for 30-some years is now becoming something that is starting to form in reality. So don't get freaked out by it. Don't think we're going to win, because we're not. We're going to lose. We're going to lose and lose and lose and lose and lose. Just like it says in Daniel chapter 12. It says that the hand of the holy ones will be shattered in a warfare by the false Messiah and his forces. It's not here yet, but it's coming shortly. So please get your eyes on the day of the Lord. And as you do it more and more, you come to know the kingdom, you'll be ready for the kingdom. You'll be more ready for the kingdom. But that means letting go of the ways of Esav, Edom, Rome, quote, Christianity, Hellenism. They're all the same thing. So you need to figure out what this is, what your enemy is, so you can uproot it from yourself. And I think that's about as good as I can do and keep smiling and be happy. This is hard to talk about. So thank you very much for your attention, and Shabbat Shalom.